Yes, I can
Yes,
hear you.
you are.
All right, so I think we'll have to start. It's already time. So, good morning, Ma. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
All right, so my name is Nzubechukwu Ogamba, and I'm the executive director here at YOHAN Africa. So this training, we have 27 persons that have joined. So, but we like to keep to time. We have a culture of excellence at YOHAN, so we don't like to waste people's time. So those who join late can follow up with the recordings. So I'm going to read the bio of the facilitator for today's training. So please pay keen attention because you might want to pick one or two things from her bio. All right, the training has started. All right, so Helen Fossam, PhD, is a freelance medical writer and owner of the Edge Medical Writing, LLC. Medical writing for continuing medical education brings together Helen's interest in the sciences, medicine, and communication. Helen applied her 20 years of medical writing experience to help address critical needs for content development, including well-written need assessment, slides, abstract, manuscripts, or conference reports. Helen's reputation for professionalism and efficiency provides a seamless extension to writing teams in the pharmaceutical, biotechnology, and medical communication industry sectors. Helen is the founder of Helen is the founder of the Missing Link to Improve Health Organization Outcome, MILHO Initiative, focused on creating online CME courses for healthcare professionals in Africa. And she's the immediate past president of the American Medical Writers Association, Delaware Valley chapter. Personally, when I read this bio, I was really flabbergasted. I'm like, wow, for us to have someone of your caliber really agreed to facilitate this training, it shows that beyond your professional accomplishments, you were also interested in developing your young people, all right, especially young people in Africa. And here at YOHAN Africa, we are very committed to empowering young people to, make their contributions towards the improvement in our health systems. So you're very much welcome. All of us at YOHAN are very grateful to have you today. So to all the participants, please want to plead with you. As soon as you join, do mute yourself and pay attention. There'll be time for questions. And when it's time, you just have to raise your hand and then we'll call you and you mute yourself and talk. So I'm going to hand over the microphone to the facilitator to start the training now. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm very honored to be here. It's an extreme pleasure to share what I know with you all, and I'm hoping that what I have to say will resonate with some of you, and I'm hoping that one or two of you will take something away from the presentation. But I'm a firm believer of getting everyone involved. So let's start by getting engaged. And I want to know where you're all coming from. I know you're all in Nigeria, but perhaps if you can use the chat feature to let me know where you're actually coming in from. And I want us to do a quick and dirty polling. And I'm going to ask, I have a series of questions, and I want you to come off mute, maybe even briefly. If you can, if your bandwidth allows, you can even come off, join by camera, and this is what I want you to answer. The first question is this. If we have people who are already medical writers and are actually making money from medical writing, I want you to all say yes. Come off mute and let me know. Is anyone currently making money from medical writing? If you are, say a yes, or you can write in the chat feature.
Yes.
The second question is, you're all on mute. Well, obviously you can't respond, but anyway, you can certainly put in the chat feature. The second question is this: if you are new or an aspiring medical writer, but you are currently not making money, I want you to say no or respond with a no.
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 Okay.
No.
Any yeses? Any yeses to the first question? Okay. If you are currently on the fence and you're not quite sure which direction to jump, can you all say a maybe or write in the chat?
Maybe.
Maybe.
And if some of you are here because you are just curious and you don't know what this medical writing thing is all about, and you just want to learn and see, is it for me? Say curious.
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 Awesome, awesome. So I think what I have to say applies to all the responses I've heard, including those who are current medical writers and not yet making money. So allow me to share my screen and let's get started. All righty. Let me just move this out of the way. You all see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
All right. I don't know how to minimize this. Cool. All right. So I thought the presentation should be titled Medical Writing 101. So we're going right to the beginning. And medical writing itself there's different aspects of it, but I thought I'll start by just giving an all-rounded overview, like a 360 miles view of, right from the top, just so that you can get some ideas. And maybe you'll start considering whether it's a possible career path for you. I've included 2 logos, and you might see my name under both. So the Edge Medical Writing LLC is the parent company, and the Milo Initiative is a subsidiary, which we are trying to escalate to become an independent business on its own. My contact information are here, and I encourage you all to connect with me on LinkedIn. Here's the agenda, things I wanted to cover. We'll start with the numbers. And some of these numbers are perhaps mind-blowing, but we'll get to it. I'll talk about what is medical writing and what do medical writers do. I'll give you some examples of the documents that are produced by medical writers. A question I get asked a lot is, how do I enter the field of medical writing? So we'll talk about that. And is freelance medical writing for me or you? What are the pros and cons? And then we'll finish by talking about the key attributes for success. And finally, Q&A. So I will probably talk for about 40, 45 minutes, and that will give us plenty of time for Q&A. Before I get into the first topic of let's look at the numbers, I want you to, I just want to share an overview of where I've come from over the past 20 years or so. I started as an employee, and over 9 years, I worked with 3 different companies. I started life in my medical writing career as a content writer for the Interactive Network for Continuing Medical Education, or INCE. I did that for about 2 years, and then I joined Medscape WebMD and was there for 6 years, and left and joined a smaller company, Robert Michael Educational Institute, and was there for just under a year. So that's my career as an employee. When I left Robert Michael, I became a freelancer, and that's what I've been doing over the past 12 years or so. As a freelancer, I worked with different companies, from A to H, I to N, P to V. As you can see, as a freelance medical writer, it allows me the opportunity to work with so many different companies. Each of these companies are those that are actually paying and repeat business. I'll come back to this slide towards the end, just to put it into context. So let's start with the numbers. Medical writing. In 2022, it was a 3.8 billion with a B industry. And the projected growth, the compounded annual growth rate, is between 10.3 and 10.5%. By 2020, it's projected to reach 8.4 billion. This is global. In Africa, it's also projected to increase. 156 million in 2019, with a compounded annual growth of 6.3, projected to reach 254.8 million in 2027. Now, these are old data, and with the growth of the industry, I'm confident that this 254 million is an underestimate. This is the projection between 2018 and 2030. As you can see, it's almost a doubling between 2018 and 2030 globally. When I started, that was back in the early 2000s, around 2000, 2003. You can imagine where it was then and where it is now. So it's a huge market. And if anyone thinks I'm making this all up, there's a link. You can follow. Maybe I'll make the slides available at the end, so you can actually check this out, check these numbers out for yourself. So why is medical writing industry growing? We just came out of the COVID pandemic, and there is an increasing demand for medical and technical writers. You can imagine the rush of new drugs that were developed, the information that had to go out to so many different people, medical type information. All these are written by medical writers. So there's an increasing demand for medical writers and technical writers. There is increase in R&D by pharmaceutical companies and biotechnology companies. Increase in research, even in developing countries. There's new development in medical devices, increase in clinical research by CRO companies, and also increasing demand by regulatory agencies. All these are driving the need for medical writers. Now, when I talk about medical writing, there's also a component of it, which is editing. Writers cannot be their own editors. So in terms of the opportunities that exist, it's not only for medical writers, but it's also for medical editors, because they work collaboratively to produce high quality documents. So if you think that writing is not for you, then maybe you can consider editing. So what does all this mean from where you sit? It's an incredible opportunity that's knocking. So if you are ready to get your slice of the cake and enjoy eating it, then follow me. Let's talk about it. So what is medical writing, and what do medical writers do? Medical writing is really technical writing, and is communicating all aspects of science, medicine, healthcare, and is targeting a broad audience. These audiences can include both specialists and non-specialist healthcare professionals. It can include academics and researchers. It can include regulatory agencies, and it can even include patients and the lay public. So when we talk about technical writing, we're not only targeting those who are highly experienced and specialized, we are also writing for the patients and the lay public, and the skills required at each of these levels. So medical writers, as far as that medical communication is involved, they play a critical role in keeping healthcare professionals up to date in their knowledge and in their clinical skills. The reason for this is so that they can provide the optimal patient care. This is what I do a lot of. Throughout my career, I've been creating content to help healthcare professionals keep up with their skills and their clinical knowledge. So the ultimate beneficiaries are the patients. So what do medical writers really do? They create content. Now, if you think about all the different places where you see medical related content written, these are written by people, usually medical writers. Examples are manuscripts, scientific manuscripts that you read in journals. Those are written by people. I've done some of them. Regulatory documents for new drug submissions. Those are accredited CME courses that I do quite a bit of. Healthcare policy documents, marketing materials for pharmaceutical companies, device companies, and other products. Medical writers are involved in supporting conferences. Think about all the documentation that are produced, if any of you have gone to conferences, the abstracts that are written before they are accepted to even go to the conference, the slides that need to be created, the posters. So all these are things that medical writers do. They can write health-related articles for magazines and newspapers. They can write blogs, medical-related blogs, sales training documents, white papers, advisory board meetings, support. Advisory boards are specialists that come together to discuss perhaps a new compound before it's actually manufactured. Medical writers sit in those advisory board meetings, take notes, participate. And they're also involved in developing patient education materials. They write needs assessments and grant proposals. This is also something I do a lot of. So as you can see, there's a whole, so many different things that medical writers can get involved in. Now, all those types of writing can be categorized into 6 major types of writing. I tend to call them the niches, and some writers focus on each of those niches. So for example, some just focus on regulatory writing, some on promotional writing, some on education, some publications or grant writing, or even health type writing. So we're going to look at each of these different niches in a moment. So who can be a medical writer? I always say that anyone from any discipline who is interested in communicating science and medicine. You don't have to be a scientist or a medical person, although that might be desirable, but it's really not essential. So they can come from a diverse educational and professional background. For example, you can be a medic, you can be a scientist, you can even be a non-scientist, such as an English major or someone in who has a journalism background and a history background. I've worked with so many people who are medical writers from these backgrounds. It's great to have a diverse background because the target audience that medical writers write for are equally diverse. So really, if you're listening and you are an English or a journalism or history major or none of these, but not scientific or medical, then really this, don't be fearful. You can absolutely do this. So what qualifications do you need to be a medical writer? I've talked about the backgrounds you can come from, but what do you need? Advanced degree is recommended, but it's not absolutely necessary. I have colleagues who are BS, Bachelor of Science degrees, and some with no degrees at all. But in this world of competition, especially with medical writing increasing the way it is, in order to be competitive, it's advised to hold an advanced degree, such as a master's, a PhD, PharmD, or even an MD. Some come into it with years of experience. So if you have been in the academic setting or a bench scientist, or you are in the healthcare sector, such as a nurse, pharmacist, dentist, or other allied healthcare professional, you can absolutely transition into medical writing because you come with a wealth of experience. Others who are not from the science background, they might have a higher degree as an MA or a PhD in journalism or English. So the bottom line is, in order for you to be competitive, absolutely having a higher degree is beneficial. And what skills do you need? You need to be able to write such that because it's technical, you need to have certain competencies. And I always say that you need to be able to conduct your research. You need to be able to interpret your finding and evaluate what you found. You need to be able to organize the information so that it makes sense to your target audience. You need to be able to present technical and often complex information to different audiences. Remember, I talked about you're writing from the highly specialized to the lay public. You need to be able to present that information so that it's understood at whatever level you're writing at. You need to be able to simplify information without losing its meaning. So if you're targeting a piece of writing to a patient, you need them to have all that information that perhaps a document that is several pages long, you need to be able to summarize it so that it makes sense to them without losing the core meaning of what you're trying to convey. What skills do you need? Understanding and empathy for your target audience's needs. I say this because you almost need to walk in the shoes of your target audience in order to understand where they're coming from and what it is you need to tell them. Because whatever you write for them, you want them to use, you want them to understand and to use it. And the target audience can be diverse. As I said before, it can range from healthcare professionals who are highly specialized to the generalists. It could be to the hospital purchasers. Because a salesperson might want to go into a hospital to sell them a piece of equipment or to sell them some drugs. And medical writers will help in creating those documents to help the salesperson sell to the hospital. Manufacturers and users of medical devices, they create documents, they need medical writers to help them sell their products. Pharmaceutical sales representatives, they need to help the company they're working for sell more of their drugs. Medical writers are involved in creating those documents. Members of the insurance industry, somebody wants to make a claim, they need to understand what the issues are, for that claim. It may be a medical issue. Medical writers can absolutely help with that. Public policy officials, patients and the lay public. So medical writers can be involved in a diverse industry and help a diverse set of people. And each of these audiences is different. Therefore, the information you present must be in a way that is appropriate to be understood and acted upon. And the way you write it for each of these people is definitely different. And we'll touch on that in a moment. So let's look at some of the examples of documents that are produced by medical writers. You saw this slide before, ranging from, I call them niches, the regulatory to the health writing. Let's start with the regulatory documents. So these are the documents that are written to track and evaluate the ethical and procedural conduct of a clinical research, including post-marketing evaluation. So when a pharmaceutical company is involved in creating a new drug, there's so many different stages involved, from the preclinical to the post-marketing. And medical writers can be involved in each of those stages. So for regulatory documents, it's essential for drug approval. Examples include documents for Institutional Review Board, IRB, before a clinical trial can be done, especially on a patient, then you need to have an approval. And that approval is a document that needs to be written. Medical writers do that. Consent for clinical trial participation. This is usually targeted at the patients. Medical writers write those things. The study protocol tends to be a huge, several pages document. These are written by somebody, medical writers. Clinical study reports. So once the clinical trial has been done, a report is normally created. And this is the kind of report that you use for, or should I say, writers use to create the manuscripts. When I write manuscripts, a pharma company will send me their clinical study report. It includes data, tables, all sorts, and you synthesize it in order to create the manuscript. Safety reports based on the reaction to drugs, all these need to be written. Investigate a new drug application. So once a drug has been through a clinical trial and is worthy of approval, then they submit what is called an IND, and these are written by somebody. And also prescribing information. I don't know if you buy a drug, usually there's paper inside that is written in tiny, tiny writing. You need a magnifying glass to read. This is written by somebody. Medical writers do that. Okay. So let's look at promotional medical education. This is a medical writing or medical education that applies marketing principles. There are certain rules that apply to this type of writing, as well as rules that apply to non-promotional medical writing. So it's primarily used by pharma companies to promote their drug, or if it's pre-approval, then it could be a compound in late-stage clinical development, or if it's approved, it might be to help them launch that product, or if it's already in the market and it has a new label, they'll need somebody to help them promote that new label. So this is the type of writing with some kind of marketing twist to it. Examples of promotional medical writing content is medical advertising, product brochures, education that's specific to a product or compound, sales training documents. And this type of writing, as I said, has specific rules and regulations. If you work for a promotional med ed company, you hear a lot about regulatory review. This is important because, at least here in the United States, you can't claim that a drug does what the evidence doesn't show. You cannot mislead the public. If you do, there's a hefty fine. And I'm sure the same applies to, in other countries. So specific rules apply to promotional medical education, but it could be a very rewarding niche to be in. Non-promotional medical education. This is a type of writing that I've done quite a bit of. It's typically continuing medical education, CME, or continuing professional development, CPD. Some use it interchangeably, but for all intent and purposes, it's the same thing, CME or CPD. It's typically targeted at the healthcare professionals, from the specialists to the generalists. And the purpose is to increase their knowledge in a specific area of practice. It's to help them update or develop new skills. It's to help them to improve their performance, as well as build relationships to improve the services they provide to the patients or the public or to their profession. So all the content that is related to do all these things are written by medical writers. This type of medical writing can be accredited or not accredited. And accreditation tends to be country-specific. Here in the United States, the CME is accredited by the ACCME, Accreditation Council for Continuing Medical Education. I'm sure other agencies are involved in accreditation in Nigeria. As I say, each country from north, south, east, west, central, each one does its own accreditation, which is a shame because if it's possible to adopt the process that is used here in the States, where only one body applies across the whole of the United States, if we can do that in Africa, it means that if you take a course, you're in Nigeria and you take a course in Ghana, it's acceptable. You get your CME, CPD points. Or if you're in South Africa, if you're in any part of Africa, yeah. So maybe this is something that will come down the pike. It can also be non-peer reviewed, such as monographs or writing articles. So for medical education, type of non-promotional medical education, it could be writing, well-referenced monographs and articles. And it can also be patient education. So as you can see, non-promotional medical education is all about increasing knowledge from the highly specialized to the patient. Again, specific rules apply to non-promotional medical education, CME specifically. So the rules of the CME is that if you're talking about one drug, you have to talk about all of them. If you're focused on one drug, then it becomes promotional. In CME language, if you talk about one, you have to talk about them all. And one can't take precedence over the other. Plus, a few other rules that applies. With publications, this is typically peer-reviewed, i.e. you're writing for a specific audience. You're writing manuscripts for journal publication. And if you want to go down this route, then you have to pay close attention to the requirements of each journal because each one is different. When I write manuscripts, the first thing I do is I check the requirements for the journal because they have their specific style and format, even the way they want the references done. So pay close attention if manuscript writing is what you're interested in. Publications can also be non-peer reviewed. Examples are evidence-based articles or monographs. It could be books, it could be company information, it can be conference reports. And moving on to grant writing. This is when you're applying for funding from grant awarding bodies. These could be private, corporate, or the government. This is a type of writing. Some writers just focus on writing grants. And in order to write these grants, you need to understand, the interest of all the parties involved. So why does a grantor want to give money? What's their interest in supporting whatever you want them to support? What's the interest of the person receiving the grant? How does it, can somebody mute?
Jessica, mute your mic. Jessica.
So how do the two gel together? And also, what's the target and the scope of the project for the funding request? So as a writer, these are the questions you need to ask yourself, because in order for the grant that you're writing to be targeted and relevant to all the parties involved, you need to know the answers to these questions. It typically includes a gap analysis. Some people call it needs assessment or needs analysis or need gap analysis. And what this does is to identify what the gaps are or what are the needs, and then formulate a solution. So if you are writing a grant, in addition to understanding all those, being able to answer all those questions from the grantor, the grantee, and the scope, you also need to figure out what are the needs and what solutions are you going to formulate. Lastly, with health writing, this is typically targeted at the general public, and it's usually about healthcare or lifestyle content type writing. It may include different types of writing, such as blog, newsletter, social media posts, news articles that focus on health and lifestyle. It could be publishing health-related content in magazines, writing for health professional websites, brands, and businesses, such as news releases. It could be brochures, such as patient information or product information. Usually, health type writing is not peer-reviewed, but it doesn't mean it's not reviewed. Whoever you are writing it for will review it. All peer review means it is submitted to perhaps a journal, and several people have read it, provided their input and comments. This typically doesn't happen in health writing. And also, the sources are usually not primary research. Primary research being those that are conducted perhaps as an experiment with data and is published. Usually the sources for health writing tend to be more general and less specific on primary type research. This is a question I get asked a lot. So how do I enter the field of medical writing? I always say, first of all, you need to enjoy communicating science and medicine, primarily in a written format, but it's increasingly audio and visual. So if you enjoy communication, if you like science, medicine, and communication, then that's a good start. Now, many gain experience or foot in the door by doing. I'm always a firm believer of, you get better by actually doing. You can read about it, but unless you do it and practice, you don't really appreciate the skills that's involved, or even help you to improve your skills. So you may be able to get your foot in the door through an internship, volunteering or shadowing an experienced writer. If you're lucky, you might have, you might get a salaried position in a medical communication pharmaceutical company, or even an academic setting, or a publishing company. But I always say network, network, network. You know, wherever you are, you can connect with people. LinkedIn is a great place for connection. So search out people who are already medical writers. You can follow them, you can volunteer and see if there's a way you can help them out, or even ask them questions that you want to know answers to. So network. If you go online, there are several professional courses that are now available that offer certificates and certifications. However, I feel that this is really not necessary, especially when you're starting out. Because while it's good to know the theory, when you're applying for a job as a medical writer, they want to know what you've done. Yeah? So the credentials are great, but the evidence of you actually doing is much better. In addition, some of these certification courses can actually be expensive. And if you're starting out, I don't think that's the way to go. It's not the way to go. But later down the line, if you are an established medical writer and now you want to up your skill, then by all means, take these courses, but not when you're starting out. So what industries hire medical writers? There are quite a number. They range from associations, authors or investigators. You'll be surprised that some scientists are very good at the science and their experiments, but they are even physicians are great at what they do, but they really don't know how to write. So that's a great area to hone your skills by writing for authors or investigators. Biotechnology companies, clinical or contract research organizations, communication, marketing or advertising agencies, government regulatory agencies, universities and colleges, hospitals and clinics, healthcare organizations, book publishers, medical devices company, medical education companies, medical schools, news outlets, peer-reviewed journals, pharmaceutical companies, and trade journals. So these is not an exhausted list. I mean, by all means, there are so many others. So what you need to be thinking about, when you're creative is, okay, where do you see medical related content written? Somebody needs to write it. So it's freelance medical writing for me or you. If you want to go down the freelance route, as a medical writer, you can absolutely have a successful career as an employee. However, others choose the freelance or the contractor route. I did both. I started my career as an employee, and then I transitioned to freelance. As a freelance medical writer, you can develop skills in as many niches as you want. Remember, I put up that 6 different areas of medical writing, which I call the niches. You can write across all of them if you want. But when you're starting out, it's always better to pick 1 or 2 niches, preferably one area, and do that really well so that you can be seen as the expert. And then you can bring other skills in. I started off as CME, continuing medical education. I went as an employee. That was the majority of what I did. But when I transitioned to a freelancer, I worked across the board. I didn't limit myself to CME whatsoever. Prime Global was the first company that I worked with as a freelancer. When I say network, I started working with Prime Global because the boss I had at Medscape, the second company I worked with as an employee, Medscape WebMD, was my boss. She reached out to me. Yeah. And I'll talk about, the qualities that you need in a moment, because all this is so important. So when I started working with Prime Global as a freelancer, it wasn't CME, it was publications. And for others, it was patient level writing. For others, it was manuscript. For others, it was a whole bunch. So I honed my skills in CME first and then expanded. I'm not saying that this is where you should do it, but that's what worked for me. In terms of the advantages and disadvantages of freelancing, if you're a freelancer, the advantages are that it's flexible. It has a good work-life balance, but that can also be a disadvantage because you can work like a dog. It gives you freedom to pursue other personal interests. It's a great way to earn extra money so that you don't have to do it full time. You can dip in and out as much as you like. You can work on a diverse range of projects. That's great because as an employee, you do whatever your employer wants you to do. As a freelancer, you can do, I won't say you can do whatever you want, but you can work on so many different therapeutic areas if you wish. You can scale up or scale down depending on your need. You can decline work. I declined work from Harvard Medical School because it didn't work out. So it really gives you a flexibility and authority to know your worth. These are some of the disadvantages. It can be inconsistent work. Okay? We call it feast to famine, and that does happen. You can work long hours. Remember I said it's flexible and it's work-life, good life balance, but to be honest, if you have multiple clients, you need to satisfy them so the hours can be long. It lacks benefits. You're responsible for if it's healthcare, if it's insurance, whatever it is, that is on you. You are responsible for winning those contracts. You don't have an employer who is giving you the project. You go out and get your project. If you don't, it's time for famine. You must be disciplined. Yeah? You can't say, I don't want to do it today. Yeah? When you have a deadline tomorrow, you got to be disciplined. It's a business. So you have to be, you have to approach it as a business. You are responsible for the accounting or the documentation or the taxes or the business-related reporting. So you need to treat this as a business. Whether it's an advantage or disadvantage, that's for you to decide. So what are the key attributes for success? Not necessarily as a freelancer, but just as a medical writer in general. You must have the right mindset. As I said, freelance medical writing is a business, so approach it as a business. You need to identify what really sets you apart. Think of it as you going for a job interview. You are competing with so many other people. You need to demonstrate what makes you better than the other so that your prospective employer will hire you, or a prospective client will take you on as a freelancer. Now, successful business owners or successful, or people with the right mindset have several things in common. They know their competitive advantage. Why a prospective customer should work with you or work with them. They need to communicate their competitive advantage. They need to brand and live their competitive advantage. They need to market their competitive advantage. And you got to show up and give. 110 is too small. Let's say 150% or more. Because I always say that the client is always right. Not necessarily, but in front of them, they are right. Because that breeds repeat business. I put up a list of almost 30 clients that I worked with as a freelancer. I have never advertised in my whole 20-year career as a medical writer. The way it has worked for me is that I don't only show up, I give 200% of myself and my work. Because whenever a client I've been working with moves into a new job, I gain a new client. I had one client who moved 5 times and I gained 5 new clients because they'll always come back to me. So what I say to you is always give more than they ask, because they will always come back and give you more. Bottom line, I bet you're wondering, where is all this going? How much can I really earn as a freelance medical writer or as a medical writer? I did look for information for Nigeria, but I could not find. But let's look at the one for the United States. So in the United States, the average is just shy of 100,000. At the bottom end is about 63,000 a year. And the really top 10% of earners could earn maybe 137 and above. But I have to tell you that $250,000 is not unheard of as a solo freelancer. Again, this is the link if you want to check the data. And finally, these are the resources that might help you to learn about the different types of medical writing, what technical writing involves. There's 2 images here. One is on the ultimate guide to becoming a medical writer, and the essential skills for success as a medical writer. And there is a few, I think it's a podcast here that are written by Right Medicine. This is quite interesting. And this is mainly for clinicians who want to pivot into medical writing. Okay. And that's it. Questions? We have about, 10 minutes or so, but I'll stop sharing now and give an opportunity for questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Ma, for that session. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, so thank you very much. It was a very wonderful session. So just before, all right, let me just say it now. If you have any question, you can just raise your hand raise your hand and then we'll call you up. Then for those that joined on YouTube, please, you can also ask your question. There is someone there to collect the question. So we actually had a challenge accommodating more than 100 persons here on Zoom. So we had to send our YouTube link for our YouTube Live. So some people joined on YouTube. Okay. So thank you very much. I picked one very important thing I picked from this is the importance of networking and volunteering. They're like my very strong points, all right? Because for me, networking and volunteering has really opened doors. And I'm very much passionate about those two. I know a lot of people were excited when they saw the average earning for medical writers. But I believe that from the session, they must have also understood that it's not just about being excited and, feeling like, okay, this is a good one, but being able to go through what it would take to develop oneself and, become someone that can earn that, because it's a process of becoming. All right. So I'm still waiting for people to raise their hands. I've not seen anyone. And, I don't know, Tolu, are there people from YouTube that are asking questions? Please, if you're not talking, just mute yourself so that we don't distract others. Mohammed, please mute yourself so you won't distract us. All right, so so thank you very much, Ma. It was really a very wonderful session, and I think the resources that were okay. All right, so Adeze, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
All right. Thank you very much, Ma, for the session. It was really insightful. I enjoyed every second of it. So I'd like to get some clarification about something I saw briefly on the slide. How you mentioned medical writers working in the insurance industry. The insurance industry has always fascinated me anyway, health insurance. So I'm wondering how medical writing, what specific role they have to play, or what, basically what specific role they can play in the insurance field. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for that question, Adeza. It's very interesting. So here in the United States, people like to sue a lot, and especially with medical related type issues. So for example, if a patient perhaps received a wrong treatment, or they were denied a certain treatment, usually an insurance company is involved in in paying for the healthcare services. So in that kind of situation, the insurance company needs to understand exactly what is going on with the patient, with that treatment or the disease or the condition that they are going through. So the patient or their representative may hire a writer to help them document what is going on and present that evidence to the insurance company. Or even if it goes to a court situation, they will be invited to help them to actually create the material, the documentation that is required in a language and a format so that both insurance company will understand it, the lawyers will understand it, the patient themselves will understand it. So that will be a scenario where a medical writer will be involved. I can't speak for what goes on in Nigeria, but certainly here in the United States and in countries where medical insurance companies are involved, this is a situation where a medical writer would be engaged to help sort out some of the issues that's going on.
All right. All right. Yeah, I hope that answered your question on that. So thank you very much, Ma. The next person is Rookie Bat Bolu. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
It is Rocky Bat. Good evening.
All right.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Ma, for the awesome presentation. My question is, you have told us the routes to getting medical writing jobs through networking, and you said LinkedIn is a great tool for doing that. I would ask you, Ma, did you go into networking directly, or you were doing more of cold emails, cold pitching, and then getting responses, or you applied for medical writing jobs on job boards like Indeed, Upwork, and so on? Thank you, Ma.
Yes, interesting question, and thank you for asking. When I started, and I actually fell into medical writing, it wasn't something that I knew about when I first started, but it was just something that presented itself to me. I had a job. Remember, I put up the first few slides with the 3 companies that I first worked with. I applied for those jobs and I did get it, and I transitioned and worked for, after the first job, I worked for Medscape and then went to Robert Michael. But as a freelancer, when I started life as a freelancer, the first contract I had was with someone, with a former boss of mine. Okay? Now, one contract doesn't make a full-time job. So this is what I did. Yeah. In those days, I wasn't really an active member of LinkedIn. So I went to Google. Okay? I looked at I did research on all the medical communication companies that I could find. I had a long list of them. And then I started writing to the hiring manager for each of those companies that appealed to me. And lo and behold, some of them, not many, responded. So rather than going through LinkedIn, because I wasn't really active on LinkedIn, I did my research and I applied. I wrote, if you like, cold writing, not really cold calling. I prefer the email route. So that's exactly what I did. And out of, I can't remember how many emails I sent, but some responded immediately and we started working together. Others took time to respond and we started working together. But for each company that I worked for, remember I said I gave 200%, okay? So that it was always repeat business and it was always by recommendation. So that list of companies I worked with as a freelancer, it was either repeat business or by word of mouth. And that's why it's so important for you to do good work. The customer is always right. So I don't know if that helps the question that you asked in terms of, how I started, the beauty of networking. But for me, that's my story, and it might not work for somebody else. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Ma. I think there's someone with the name admin. I don't know. Can you unmute and ask your question?
Hello, good evening. So sorry, I'm using a work laptop. That's why it's showing admin. My name is Ayomide. I'm a medical doctor, but I'm currently not practicing. I wanted to ask a question. Thank you, Ma, for your presentation. It was very detailed, and I look forward to the slides so I can go through it and follow up on the links that were attached to it. I wanted to find out, do you know any medical writers that started their medical writing journey in Nigeria that have an expansive CV as you do? Because it might be a bit more difficult for us here having access to the I guess the community that you do there. That's one. And then in my case, I finished medical school in 2020, did my internship and practiced for only a few months, but haven't practiced since then. Would you say before I want to attempt, because I'm quite serious about medical writing, before I want to attempt reaching out for potential internships or jobs or freelance jobs, if there are any courses specifically that might make me more hireable? So those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for that, for those questions. On having access to, well, first of all, in terms of medics who are in Nigeria and who are medical writers, yes, there are, and I've actually worked with some of them who are actually on LinkedIn. And maybe we can follow up afterwards and I can connect you to the person or persons actually. And as far as having access, I see the world as so small. And the beauty of medical writing is that you can be anywhere in the world and you can work with anyone in the world. I work with people from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the United States. I work with people in Europe. I work with people in India. So it doesn't really matter where you are. So in terms of that access, because everything you do is online, you don't have to be physically present anywhere. So don't let your location be a barrier. Okay. Now, in terms of the courses that you might take. I'm always one for, I like free things. I like to register for anything that is free. And sometimes it's just a matter of you, looking online to see what's available. There's an organization that I refer to a lot called SCORE, but I'm not quite sure whether it's open
Favor
to.
Samuel, can you mute yourself? Sorry, ma. Sorry, I'm cutting you short. Favor Samuel, please mute yourself.
Yes. You said?
Mute yourself. You're muted. Please mute yourself. You're
Are
distracting
you
the.
serious? I'm not aware of that. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry
So,
about that.
as in terms of the courses, there are, looking online will expose you to, what is possible. And the links that I've included on that final slide, there are, resources, and the last link is actually something that is a podcast that is created by a medic and is targeted to medics. So, and often it talks about how those medics started their career in freelancing. So I will encourage you to listen to that. But in terms of paying for courses, I mean, in one of my slides, I said, okay, if you have the money, by all means, but practicing, doing is actually what people are looking for. If you get a project, if you get a contract, they don't want to train you. They want to know that you can do the job. So, getting your portfolio, showing that, these are samples that you've actually, created. I think that is more valuable than taking a course and getting a certification. But by all means, if there's anything free that you can access, especially at this early stages, then that's the route to go. And as I say, we can touch base offline, and I can connect you to people who have actually, who are medical doctors in Nigeria, who are medical writers. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, ma, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. I will, what would be the best way to reach out? Because I really would like to have contact of medical writers in Nigeria.
Yes. So the first slide, I have my email, I have my LinkedIn.
Okay.
Either one will work.
Okay, I'll reach out. My name is Ayomide. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much, ma. So just before we take, I think we'll just take 2 more questions. We'll have one from YouTube, and I think it's he was trying to get clarification on the niche in medical writing. I think he wasn't really his audio was having an issue, so I just wanted you to like brush through if you can the niche in medical writing.
Oh, the different niches?
Yes, ma, the different niches.
Okay. Do you want to reshare my slide?
That will help. If that will
Yeah.
help, you can.
Okay. Let me
please, I want to encourage us not to leave the meeting. We've not taken our group picture, so please, if you're not interested in the questions, I think you should just stick around a little while. But I think we all should be interested in the questions because a lot can still be picked and some clarifications from the question other people ask. So I'm going to stop now.
Okay. So these are the 6 different categories that I call niches of medical writing. The regulatory, which is really geared towards the pharmaceutical industry in terms of drug development and approval. There's the promotional, which is the marketing, has a marketing component. There's the education, which is typically continuing medical education or a CME, a CPD, and also for patients. There's publications, which focuses on writing manuscripts for journals. There's also grant writing, which is applying for funding on behalf of your clients. So you identify who is giving money, and your clients want the money. So you need to understand how the two connect. There's also the health writing, which is usually for the lay public. And it could be something like writing blogs, writing articles, writing health-related content, mainly for the general public. So these are the different categories, and each one of them is different in terms of how you present the material. For example, you could be writing on diabetes or hypertension for each of these audiences, but the way you write it for a regulatory document is definitely different from the way you write it as for health writing for the general public. Okay, so I don't know if there's any questions from the person who is looking for this information.
All right, thank you very much, Ma. I think you've done justice to that. If there's any more questions he has, I'll read it out. But we have one more person, Nonya Obija. Please unmute and ask your question.
Okay. Good evening, Ma. Thank you very much for the lectures. My question is on health writing for the public. So I want to know the do's and the don'ts, or you just write anything you want and, you know, submit to a magazine. You know, how is it really done? Because is it reviewed, or, you know, you just write and post? Thank you, Ma.
Sure. Thank you for that question. With health writing, it's the person that reviews it is the person you are writing it for. If it's for a paid piece that you're writing. Now, if somebody commissions you to write a health piece, they know in their mind what they want you to write about, right? So you don't just write any old thing that you want. They will commission you to write something, okay, that they want you to write about, right? And when you've written it, they are the reviewers of the content you've written. It doesn't go out to a peer reviewer, all right? Now, this is if somebody is paying you for it. Now, if you are writing a health piece for yourself, for example, you have a website that you want to publish it on, or you can even publish it on LinkedIn or any other outlets, okay? What is best for you to do is to find out, what do people want to know about? Yeah. What's the issues that people are facing? I know for sure that, you know, when we had the craziness of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, there was a lot of writing related to all sorts of aspects of COVID, yeah? From specific disease problems to, you know, how you manage on a day-to-day basis. Okay? But in the world we live in today, there are so many challenges, health challenges that we face. I know for sure that in Africa, maybe specifically in Nigeria, hypertension is an issue. Diabetes is an issue. Cardiovascular disease, as in stroke, is an issue. So if you do your research and find out exactly what do people want to know, what do they need to know, and you create those content, yeah, and you publish, you can absolutely publish it on your own. Yeah? You can post it, but before you do that, remember I said that a writer cannot be their own reviewer. You need to get somebody to review and edit for you before you post. Yeah? So it's not just a matter that you wake up one day, oh, I'm going to write about this. No, it has to be targeted. It has to be intentional. It has to have a purpose. Yeah? And that intention and purpose starts with you doing the research behind what you want to write. Okay? Does that help?
Yes, ma. Thank you, ma.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, so thank you very much, Ma. It's been a very insightful session. I know you have another engagement, so I wouldn't like us to hold you back much longer. So if there are any maybe questions, or if they want to follow up on certain areas, I believe with your contacts, that you've shared, they should be able to do that. So I'm encouraging everybody to please follow her on LinkedIn. I'll share the LinkedIn profile directly on the WhatsApp group, and then we'll add it in the follow-up email that I'll be sending to everybody. So thank you very much, Ma. We're very glad to have you. On behalf of the entire YOHAN Africa family, I want to really appreciate
Hold on.
this kind gesture.
Let me ask this question. Hold on. Yeah, excuse me, can I ask a question, please?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes, please, thank you for the exciting lecture. My name is Benis. I'm a PhD student of ACE Puto Port Harcourt. Are we gonna get the slide for this training?
Yes, correct. Yes, absolutely. Otherwise, all the links that I mentioned, you will not have access to it. I will absolutely share the slides. And on the slide, my contact information is right there. And the last slide is resources that, again, you can all access.
Yeah, please, sorry, I didn't come in time, so I didn't get the link where it's gonna be shared to. Is it through our emails or where?
Yes, no, I'm going to send it to, is it Kingsley? I'll share,
Yeah.
I'll send the slide to Kingsley, and then I'm sure he has the contact of everybody here on the call. Is that correct? Or to...
Yes, see, don't worry about the slides for those that are asking. As soon as she sends it across, it will be part of what we'll send you in the email. So please just don't worry about the slides, including the recording for the meeting. They're all going to be released.
Okay.
Sorry, but I think there's one more question here. The person is asking, Oloruwa is asking about the difference between medical writing and clinical trials. I don't know how that sounds like a broad question.
Yes. Okay, so clinical trials. Imagine a drug that is going to be out on the market, okay, before it's approved. It goes through a whole series of experimentation from preclinical, that is even before you involve patients, to clinical. This is where patients are involved. Okay? Now, even up to the point of it's approved and it's now on the market and you can go and buy it. All along the way, from the preclinical, when those experiments are being done, the results needs to be published. That's where the medical writers come in. Okay. During the clinical phase, usually there's phase 3, phase 1, 2, phase 3. Okay. At each of those phases, whether the drug results are positive or negative, it needs to be published. That is where the medical writers come in as manuscript writers. Even before the results come out, the patients in the clinical trial need to be engaged, right? Patients need to be given the information about the trial. They need to be encouraged to sign up for the trial. Okay? That information that is given is usually in writing. Medical writers do that, right? And when, after a drug is on the market, yeah, usually there's post-marketing surveillance they do, where they report all the bad side effects or whatever it is that they want to monitor. Yeah. When all that information comes in and needs to be published, yeah, or even before it's approved and the FDA, the regulatory bodies need to read through all the results, medical writers are involved. Yeah. So medical writing and clinical trials, I would say, go hand in hand. Clinical trials is one thing, is an entity on its own. Medical writers are an entity on its own, but both of them need to work together to get that information out. There's no point in doing the trials unless people know about it. if a drug is bad or it has all these awful side effects, the only way we can know about it is when it's communicated. Yeah? So that's kind of the difference between them. They're different, but they are similar. One needs the other. Does that help?
Okay, I think I believe it's the answer is very helpful. The person asked the question in the chat box, so I think he or she was able to unmute. Yeah. So
Okay.
please, yeah, she said yes. Thank you very much, Ma. So she's appreciating. All right. So please, can we appreciate this the facilitator for today's training? Just you can type on the chat box and just appreciate her. It's not ordinary like coming for a training like this and offering this kind of insights free of charge. So please do appreciate her. And then please can we all unmute our videos? If you don't want to unmute your video, please maybe upload a profile picture like on your Zoom account so that when we take a picture, you can capture everybody. So you can see that my face, you can see my face as I'm talking to you. So that's how I want it to be. So please let's take a picture before the the session. All right, Kingsley, are you ready? Please, we need more persons to unmute. Please unmute your video. You are free now to unmute. Some of you were not muted, no one wanted you to mute, but so now you are free to unmute your video. Bernice, Blessing, Ayodeji, Abdul Majid. Unmute yourselves, please.